Good afternoon. Welcome and evening on the East Coast. Welcome everyone. The Costume Society of America thanks you for joining today's Dress and Drinks in our webinar series, Conversations on Dress. Please remember to do a couple of things. One, please mute your microphone and turn off your camera to improve the streaming quality. Move it to, and additionally, changing your screen view from everyone to active cameras will improve your experience. While we are broadcasting live, this content will also be recorded and available to view afterwards through our YouTube channel. Should you have any questions for today's speakers, please submit them in the chat box. And should you have any general questions regarding CSA's digital content, please contact Conversations on Dress at costumesocietyamerica.com. And with that, please allow me to introduce myself. I'm Leon Wiebers. I am the Associate Professor of Costume Design at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles. And our guest today is Dave Meyer. Dave, if you'd please turn your camera on and join us, from the Aktá Lakota collection in Chamberlain, South Dakota. Welcome, Dave. How are you?
Let's unmute the mic. I'm doing fantastic. It's good to see you.
Excellent. So, Dave, how would you like to begin? Would you like to take us on a virtual tour? First of all, thank you for agreeing to do this. We're so excited to get to see your collection and to have this conversation with you. We have just a couple of members of Costume Society in South Dakota, and so this is a kind of a rare treat. And full disclosure, I am a native South Dakotan, so it was a little bit on my side that I wanted to like plug the SD state. So, so Dave, how would you like to begin? Would you like to take us on a virtual tour and share some things, or what would you like to do?
Yeah, I suppose we'll start with a virtual tour. I'll share my screen and try to take care of any technical problems here. I'm muting my other camera real quick.
Great.
There we go. And oh yeah, well, this is important. I'm just got so many things going on at once here, but this is important. Thank you. It's not often, you know, South Dakota gets showcased, and we appreciate that. The Aktá Lakota Museum appreciates that.
Excellent. So we're so excited. I have actually been to your museum on my way through the state on a couple of occasions, and it's such a charming space. I mean, the museum itself is really lovely, and so yeah. So let's go for a tour.
Okay. Oh, I want to change the order, but at what point do I get to have that?
Ooh, after you take us on the tour, we have to work first, and then we'll sit down and have
a man.
I know. It's a very old Midwestern thing. Work first, play last. So
all right, well, I'm going to apologize in advance if I do any kind of technical weirdness here. All right, so I wasn't sure the order to start things in, but right now we're really, well, we're proud of lots of stuff, but we're proud of our collection storage area, because a big part of our mission is preservation. And I thought rather than talk about that area, you know, while we're walking around looking at the beautiful art, I would just kind of get that out of the way first.
Great.
Let me see here where I can find.
And while you're pulling that up, tell us a little bit about the history of, or maybe this will be embedded in it. Tell us a little bit about the Aktá Lakota Museum and collection and its background.
Okay, fantastic. Well, the Aktá Lakota Museum and Cultural Center opened in '91, but it's the educational outreach of St. Joseph's Indian School, which started in 1927. There's definitely more to tell you, but now that I've got my slides open, I kind of want to go to that next. Okay. And I would definitely appreciate lots of your questions so that I stay on task and stay in order here. No worries. Here's just the St. Joseph's or Aktá Lakota Museum's contact information. Do you see all this stuff too? All my GoToMeeting stuff, or are you seeing just the slide?
No, we're just seeing the slide. So that's
okay.
Great.
Fantastic. All right. So next slide here. All right, so yeah, our collection storage area. So when you get to enter there, there's a secure area, the security code and fobs. All activities recorded, so we know who's going in and out of our collection storage. The cabinets are Delta storage cabinets, double steel doors. Sounds like I'm doing a commercial here, but they're non-reactive. They're solvent-free. It was important for us, and we spent a long time trying to take care of our collection in really substandard conditions. So every time I walk into collection storage, feels a little bit like Christmas.
Oh, very nice.
Here's our research library. Not only books that we can use to help us understand our collection better, but also books that we collect that are kind of like artifacts in and of themselves.
Yes.
Also, what else was I going to share? Oh, I know. We spend a lot of time tracking the artists in our collection and seeing what publications they're in and having as much of that information as you possibly can as well.
I'm sorry, can you repeat which collection you said that?
Oh, yeah. So with our visual art collection, but also if there's people who, just anytime that our collectors, our artists, artifacts, anything that's referenced in a book, we want to have that book so that we can connect the pieces in our collection with all the publications.
Oh, that's fantastic. So it sounds like you have a very deep, very rich crossover between the artifacts and publications for any scholars who come to do research there.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things we strive to get even better at. Like, one of my things for our museum is for scholars to come visit and, you know, just be able to share this information as best we can. Here's our Textiles and Hides.
Oh, wow.
On cantilever racks.
It must be challenging to store hides. What are some of the challenges that you incur and that you encounter storing hides? And what kind of hides do you have?
Well, buffalo for sure. You know what? I don't want to say the wrong thing on the rest, but I can tell you that storing, photographing, the fact that there's organic, you know, it's even though it's a dried hide, it's organic material. So there's a lot of different challenges. And then beyond that, full disclosure, I still have a lot to learn about those types of materials. I've been in this position for about a year. So I'll probably encounter more challenges and also more victories soon, I bet.
As you're learning along the way, yes, indeed.
Absolutely.
That's actually interesting to know. So since we're talking about that, you are a research center as well. Scholars are able to come to your center and do research in the collection.
Yes, absolutely. That's actually been, including this experience. So again, thank you. Every time someone comes to do research is an opportunity for us to learn as well. Yeah, I kind of want to go off on a tangent and tell you some of those stories, but yeah, it's just that these people come and they're experts in their area. They learn from our collection and we learn from them.
Yes, there's always a give and take in museum collecting and museum scholarship. So, and that's part of the goals of CSA, and part of the point of this series is to reach out to collections and to make your collections more visible and known to our membership and to the general public, so that way those who are doing research in these areas or who have interest in research in these areas can actually know where the resources are and able to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. These almost look like two abstract photos, which I should probably reference that I'm an artist as well, so I got a little creative on that one. But this is just showing you the passive filter vents that are in all the cabinets to help control humidity, even in the cabinets.
Oh, that's
and
fantastic.
Then that's our HVAC there. Our collection storage area is it's got its own separate dedicated HVAC system that has like alarms, and it'll alert us if there's anything off in humidity or temperature or anything like that.
That's amazing. You have a very modern, it seems very modern and also large storage area. It looks like you also have room to grow.
We do. Thank goodness. This is, I mean, I guess I'm kind of referencing here that these cabinets hold a lot of weight. These are our bronzes,
Wow.
some of our bronzes. And here I'm just mentioning that every artifact is in a, can you see my mouse, by the way?
Yes, we can see your arrow. That's fine.
Okay, great. Yeah, they're all, every artifact has a custom-made acid-free box that helps, you know, keep it organized and safe, helps us know where things are. So that's how I'm referencing in that photo.
Sorry to interrupt, but can you go back to that slide, please?
Absolutely.
That is just an amazing way of storing headdresses. That is fantastic to keep the feathers in, you know, protected and upright. That is just, I'm blown away. I never would have imagined that. Thank you.
Awesome, and I'm glad to hear that. And I got to give a lot of credit to our lab tech. She built all the boxes, and she's had to learn along the way as well. But yeah, she does a great job. So here I'm referencing that we store artifacts flat.
Yes.
And just a cool shot of some of our moccasins, and again with the organization, and we're just blessed to be able to take care of these items this way.
Yes, exactly. I'm so sorry. I'm just so excited. I'm talking over you. Forgive me. How many pairs of moccasins do you have? Those are stunning.
Oh boy.
This makes me want to go buy shoes. Those are amazing.
Yeah. And then right here, these are our compactable storage for 2D art. There's a track here, and these collapse and expand, and then our 2D art is hung on those. So you'll get a better look when I take you back there.
Oh, very nice.
And then here's just my contact information. If anyone has specific questions for me that they'd like to ask about our collection, if I can organize a virtual tour or whatever you need to contact me for, there's my information here at Aktá Lakota.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That's great. And we will have a question and answer session at, you know, when we come back from your walkabout tour, and when we have our cocktail together. So,
Perfect.
So shall we shift over to your walking tour? Okay.
I don't make you wait any longer. So right now we are in the Aktá Lakota Museum. Wait, you can't hear me. There. We are in the Aktá Lakota Museum classroom right here.
Oh, wow.
Here we go.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So here we have, we're just entering the main museum here, I guess. And it's kind of fun being here after close.
It's a very large space. It's really lovely.
I want to say the exhibition space, I want to say 1,400.
Very nice.
I think. Here's a piece that I thought would be relevant for Costume Society of America. This is a war shirt. So this is about 1890s, this piece, and it was made by Mrs. Weaselbear for William Firethunder. It says, when Lewis and Clark described the everyday attire of the Plains male, they made no mention of the best known article of Plains Indian male dress, the war shirt. This is probably because they did not see it. Until the mid-19th century, these shirts were worn only by distinguished leaders as a kind of honorary emblem. In the later part of the 1800s, these shirts were made for the young men who won membership in the band's Shirt Wearers Society. The decorated shirts were made for the young warriors by older leaders, with ornamentation representing the young warriors' individual triumphs. Hair locks from relatives were sewn on the shirt for good luck. The shirts were presented to the warriors in formal ceremony. The young men who won the honor of being part of the Shirt Wearers Society
were expected to act as leaders in council as well as in battle, and to be mindful always of the well-being of the tribe as a whole.
So that's human hair? That's fantastic.
And a lot of our visitors, that's they don't realize it's the hair of relatives. You know, it's not anything more.
So what are you sharing with us now?
Well, what I like about this piece, or in general, I'll just tell you that it's a trade cloth dress from the 1890s, and one of the things I personally like about the trade cloth clothing is the way that the Native Americans like to leave the raw edge, because where the dye ended and then the raw cloth, and then rather than just trim that off, it became part of the ornamentation of the clothing. So I always like seeing that.
That's fantastic.
There's other pieces. Oh, go ahead.
What is the material over the shoulders of that garment?
That is, okay, let's see if I say it right. I want to say dentilia. I should maybe be able to say that. It's like a shell. It's from the water. And it's kind of like pre beadwork.
Wow. That's amazing. That's a beautiful piece.
One of the things, and I can't say that about this piece specifically necessarily, but you know, like different details can be added at different times. So I'm not sure why you can see that detail, but there's almost like sequins,
yes,
which very well could have been added, you know, years later, while other parts are much older.
Yes.
Here, this is super spontaneous, but I really want to show you this really fast. I wasn't even planning on it. It's pretty dark, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It's a porcupine hairbrush.
Oh, interesting.
The other thing I wanted to I'll just kind of try to be smooth, sweep past this exhibition. This is an exhibition of contemporary art, all from our permanent collection. And it was literally like, I don't know, 4 o'clock my time, like an hour before this, that I was just really noticing, like here's a self-portrait, and this fellow's wearing a jean jacket. It just seems so relevant to me and important. Here's a different self-portrait of Daniel Long Soldier wearing, you know, a beaded hat that says Sioux on it. And in the reflection of his sunglasses, you can see the powwows happening.
Yes.
So the fact that we keep a contemporary collection, it actually helps us to understand our artifacts better through a native lens, so to speak, by having these relationships with these artists, having opportunities to talk to them, seeing continually how they interpret their culture. Yeah.
Excellent. Those are wonderful. What a great space.
All right, so yeah, we're entering collection storage now. Whenever I enter, it's like,
it's expansive, actually. Wow. Ooh, it looks like you pulled out some treats to share with us.
I did. And what I wanted to start with, see if I can get good light on this. That's one of the beads, one of the seed beads. You've already seen a lot of beadwork. You're going to see more.
Oh, wow. What are those garments?
Okay, so, yeah, this I was especially thinking of Costume Society of America. These are a pair of moccasins that aren't finished. And another thing to reference in that is that perhaps this beadwork would end up being on another object. So depending on what the artist who made this, what their plan was, but getting a chance to see this is pretty rare, I believe.
That's
And
amazing.
then right next to it is, again, there's probably going to be the bottom of this pair of moccasins. So that's the insole sort of the moccasin. But what you're seeing on here is that this at first was a parfleche box. A parfleche box, here's a parfleche box. So these type of things would be repurposed as well. So once someone didn't want their box, I'm gonna make my box into shoes.
So what is the box? How does the box function?
There's various. I mean, it can be very utilitarian, but this particular one that I pulled was Northern Plains. Let's see. Let me get the date here. Oh, 1930 to 1940. Tanned rawhide, geometric design. Mount Rushmore, previously owned. It was previously owned and used by Plenty Wolf, and it's a medicine. It's like he was a medicine man. So this one would have slightly different purpose. And this is why the reason I pulled this one. I just love that it had its contents in it. So this is a tiny bow, like a toy-sized bow, and there's also sage in there, and a pipe stem, but they're all miniature. So, yeah, I mean, I love any artifact that can tell me a story right away, even if I don't know the history. Like, there's a story there.
Right.
Did I properly answer that question? I'm just rambling now.
No, that's okay. And those are then a complete set of moccasins.
Right. And so this one I pulled because it has beadwork, but also quill work.
Oh wow.
Porcupine quill.
And what is the thread being used to do the beadwork? Do you know? And I said, what is the kind of thread? I mean, not necessarily thread used to attach the beads. What material is using to attach the beads?
Okay, very good. Yeah. Yeah, right here I've got, so that's one way we can tell how old an object is also. The traditional material is sinew, which is basically hide that's been dried in such a way that you can pull off like threads of it.
Oh wow.
And then in contemporary work, a lot of times artisans use simulated sinew. So it's basically a waxed thread that has the same kind of feel. These are a pair of glasses that are beaded. And it gives you a reference.
Those are amazing.
Yes, yeah. That it's a living culture. Like it's
That's it's an amazing use of the decorative art, of the decoration, not the decorative art, but that mode of decoration of not just textiles but other wearable objects. Wow. So tell us the story of this bonnet, of this headdress.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So, I can tell you that it was owned by Trent Ramar, aka Chief Whitefeather. And what's interesting about him for us is it is difficult to research items with no provenance. But this chief was prominent enough from 1908 to 1957 that I was able to simply Google and find information, which is fantastic. There's photos of him online. It was passed on to his son, Rainbow Red Canoe, who died in 2017. And then his son's wife donated the object to our museum. And there's so many things to learn from it. I spend a lot of time, and so does our museum tech, pictures of where a bead is about to fall off. I'm not sure how well this is coming through.
Right.
So you look at items so closely, and then,
Yes.
then you also, as you're researching, try to look at them from a very wide perspective, metaphorically speaking as well. So that's good old Scotch tape, and I mean I've spoke to some folks who have artifacts like this, and I'm told that it's an item, maybe not this one specifically, but you just keep using it. It's part of your culture, part of your history. So rather than, I might feel like, oh, that's an antique, but
So they're living, breathing, continually evolving objects, as you say.
Yes, yeah, and
Yes.
I just think that's
That's really interesting. What are the tops of the feathers? Are those also a different kind of feather?
So the main feathers are eagle feathers, and this red part would just be like a commercially produced. The eagle feathers here, and then the brightly dyed feathers are just commercially like acquired. They're like a. Let me see if it says specifically.
And what is it attached to? Is that also hide?
Correct. Well, this is like trade cloth.
Uh-huh.
And this is as well. And then another unique thing about this particular headdress is the portion that you might equate to a hat, I guess, in a way.
Uh-huh.
That's hide. And in many headdresses, that part might be especially more contemporary ones, sort of again, a commercial type hat that's repurposed.
Right. I think some of our viewers may not know, but can you please define for us what trade cloth is? I don't know what that is. I've never heard that term.
Okay. So basically, pre-colonialization, you'd use hide. Most of the things were made of different kinds of hide. And then once, for lack of a better way to say it, once the white man came, there was fabric to trade, and you'd literally trade services or goods for fabric and different objects that the Native Americans could use. So, yeah. So these cloth items that these artifacts are made of, we refer to as trade cloth.
Do you know within that, so does trade cloth then as a term become a bulk representation of cotton, wool, any linen, things of that nature, or is it always sort of like a wool or a blend or?
This piece, these are pennies, and when we store this piece, that's a piece of fabric laid on top of the dress, which with each of the pennies pulled through so that the pennies aren't making contact with the actual dress.
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm so impressed with our lab tech's work on that I wanted to show it to you.
That's incredible. Wait, how are the pennies attached?
It's a modern thread, and they're each sewed on. And this is one where I'll send a link to a good, but that's what the dress looks like.
Oh, that's
Um,
fantastic. Please send us a link to that image.
Absolutely. And then let's see how this comes out. I'm gonna share this with you. By Jim Yellowhawk. And this contemporary art piece feels like it kind of references the time we're in. And what it is it's called Mocks and Chucks. And there's an evolution to Chuck Taylors that are beaded. And then the piece incorporates a box that shoes were in.
Oh, wow.
And it just kind of references how, two cultures get to know each other, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I would have to, I would love to hear if Jim Yellowhawk shares that sentiment, but I believe he does. This is dolls. And
Oh, wow.
it's a pretty common art form to recreate different kind of historical regalia. Another interesting thing about these is the
It
size
seems like
of
you have a very large doll collection.
It is. So here's my hand to show how big this piece is, but that'd be like a ceremonial for peyote ceremony, but it's miniature, and like the size of those beads, even
Wow.
smaller than the one I showed you. All right, so I wanted you to see that, and maybe it's time to get back. I can't show you everything. I sure want to. Anything else you think you'd like to see in collections before I go the other way?
No, I think we're good. This is really a great taste of your collection. And as we're walking back, I'll ask a question. One of our members of the audience asked if one can make an appointment to tour the research department of the museum.
Absolutely. Probably you can contact either number. And yeah, that's welcomed. I don't know if I answered enough, if that answers the question, but yep.
Yes, indeed. And we'll make sure to post your contact information so that way so people can reach out to you directly after this. So
Fantastic.
That's wonderful. This is, I want to go back, as you're walking through the museum, you showed us a parasol the other day when we did our tech run through that I'd love for you to look for. And while you're doing that, I will answer another question.
Okay.
Yes, Lewis and Clark spent quite a bit of time going through the Dakotas.
Absolutely. So the parasol is by I'm saying his name wrong, but for many horses. This as a beaded parasol and fan. It has those really small beads. And this is a contemporary piece that we purchased at the Red Cloud Art Show. Every year, St. Joe's goes to that art show to see what's happening in contemporary Native American art.
Excellent. We'll talk more about that when you sit down. So when you come to your office and we can shake up a cocktail and start opening up questions.
Fantastic.
So thank you so much. This is a wonderful tour of your space and of the storage. Like the next time I'm in South Dakota, I'm certainly coming to visit you, Dave. And also the grounds of the museum are quite nice too. I believe you said in your email that right outside there's what kind of circle is outside of your office?
The medicine wheel garden.
Oh, the medicine wheel garden, yes. So, and in the meantime, I'm going to shake my cocktail up here, ready to go. Yes, thank you. The muddler would come in handy to do that. So I am pouring here. I used all of my sage pieces in this, so we'll wait until it gets here. Thank you. And Dave, thank you about the cocktail recipe or the mocktail recipe. And just as a note, the reason this section, this version of Drinks and Dress is alcohol free is because they're on a school campus. So Dave, cheers. Here's to you, and thank you so much. Oh, that's good.
Very good.
Okay. So first off, before we dive into, and we already have several questions, but I want to ask a few things about you. So first of all, Dave, I'm going to get some of these hard questions out of the way. How does a white dude end up curating a Native American collection, and what sort of representation on the board in the museum of Native American cultures do you have, so that way we can talk about that. Many collections are going through and disciplines are going through these challenging questions about representation and BIPOC peoples. And of course, we are focusing on a Native collection today in order to not only learn about it, but also learn about its history and the people who work with you.
Absolutely. So first, like, it would be fantastic if the curator of Aktá Lakota Museum was a Lakota person. That would be fantastic. It's kind of an issue not only at our museum but at our school. Like all the employees of St. Joe's, we would like more Native American representation campus-wide. But there's a couple of factors. One of the factors relates to all cultures. It's the fact that how rural we are. When folks come to potentially have a job at St. Joseph's or at the museum or anywhere, if they've come from either coast, when they're being interviewed, they're asked, is it okay that the nearest Walmart is an hour away? Or when you go to the movie, there's one movie, that's all there is to choose from. The ruralness of where we are affects things. But beyond that, it's just finding folks who are seeking these positions that we're trying to hire as many Native American folks as we can. And the other part of that is we also want to do that for our students. We want as many real powerful role models for our students as possible that are of their culture. So it is something we try to do. So that's like part A of the question. Part B of the question is, well, why is it this guy? And that has to do with just my history at St. Joe's. I came here at first as a visiting artist. I made an artwork with the students. And unbeknownst to me, that was sort of almost like an interview. And about a year later, I was the art teacher at St. Joe's. Prior to that, I'd lived in California, and I was teaching at a small college in California. Oh, you're from California, you know all about that, probably small college. And
you don't need to reveal names.
Okay.
What happens at Drinks and Dress stays at Drinks and Dress.
There we go. Yeah, so after being the art teacher for so long, I started to form relationships just being in this area. But also, I was on the purchasing committee or the acquisition committee for the museum for quite some time. So I feel I've been here for 15 years. And before I ever imagined I would be working in the museum, I started feeling a connection to the collection because I was in on, at first I was just a spectator, watching and learning. It was Father Steve at the time, and he asked if I'd like to just observe. One of the members was the dean of USD, University of South Dakota. And I already had a lot of respect for him, so I took advantage of the opportunity to learn from him. And then Arthur Amiot and Roger Breuer, both Native American. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that I kind of grew with. I mean, the collection grew with me, and
right.
it's made it a good fit for me.
Nice. So you talked about the contemporary art show that you often purchase things from, or that the museum does for the collection.
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate on that? What is the show, and how many? And so this tells me that you're actively collecting contemporary Native art. So what sort of things do you acquire from that?
Okay. I can't speak to very many specific details about Red Cloud Pacific show, but it's a contemporary Native American art show that it's yearly. This year they had to go virtual, like so many people. Another show that we try to attend is called Native Pop, People of the Plains is what the pop part is. But also we're always just seeking people to submit their contemporary art. And we have quarterly meetings to purchase, to look at the art, and just kind of get a feel, to have your finger on the pulse of what's being made and what's happening. And it's interesting because a lot of our artists are self-taught, and then more and more of them are going to art schools. And so to see this kind of combination of cultures come through in the contemporary work has been really exciting to see.
I have one last question before I open up the floor to the barrage.
Okay.
And that would be, so since you're associated with St. Joseph's, do you have like internships or training programs for Native students in the museum so they can come in and start learning this? One of the challenges that our disciplines face very often is that those sorts of early opportunities for students and for young people to gain access to this kind of training and this kind of work is not either readily known or available. And so do you guys have that sort of training program for like internships, whether they be for high school students or college students or university or graduate students?
Yeah, we do. But mainly it's university level, because they'd be in the thick of working on the museum stuff. The last person we had working for us was writing up a lot of our descriptions in Past Perfect and doing research on our 2D art. And the thing about being a private organization is that we have a lot of flexibility. You know, we want to do as much good as we can. So if an opportunity arises for a brand new kind of internship, I would imagine we'd be totally open to that. So really, it's just how all the pieces come together.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so we have a few questions. I'm going to start out with and comments. One of our viewers was like, "A porcupine hairbrush!" exclamation point, so cool. So we look forward to a still photo of that so we can see more of that. Another commented on how lovely the mount of the headdress was. And so very beautifully done. And a shout out to Ann Wass, and I'm always talking to you on this space. So thank you again, Ann, for your input on the cocktail recipe and your question about Lewis and Clark. I can talk to you more about Lewis and Clark. They went through all over the state. What is the oldest costume item in your museum, in your collection?
You know, I anticipated that question, and I did quite a bit of digging, and it's funny because the older the object is, the more ambiguous the date is.
Yes.
And so I was 1800s is the word I want to throw out. That's pretty broad, but
we're all used to that. That's okay. We're all used to the vagueness, and we also all understand the complexities and the difficulty of dating dress, and especially the dress that you're talking about, which continues to live and evolve, as opposed to, in some ways, dress gets frozen in time.
Right.
So yes, thank you. Does the museum host a workshop on beading or quill work with Lakota artists?
We, for St. Joe's, our annual powwow is a really big deal for us, and St. Joe's is 100%. And when I say that, that means so sorry, let me say this in order. St. Joseph's Indian School is 100% run on donations from donors. And our museum is an extension of St. Joseph's. And so our yearly powwow is when not just donors, but folks from all over, even other countries, come to St. Joseph, come to Chamberlain, South Dakota, you know? And let's see now. I almost need to
Oasis.
Right, exactly. I was trying to craft my answer so well, I forgot the question now. Where was I?
Quill work and workshops with Lakota art.
Yes, that's what I was getting to. I was really going the long way around. Basically, that's a time when in the museum we have at the minimum demonstrations so that people can, I mean, quill work is amazingly intricate. It's and for the people who are visiting to see just how that's done and then see the artifacts, it gives everyone that much more understanding. So the short answer is about once a year we try to do that, but also we have Native American Studies in the classroom for the students, and we teach beadwork. I've taught beadwork. I always had to have the students thread the needle for me because it's so small, which made them frustrated, but also gave me a good sense of what was happening. So yeah, it's taught there as well.
Excellent. You're welcome to share any of your events with CSA, and we will post them and share them with our membership as those events come up. One of our audience members mentions that it looks like you have a fantastic collection, and you mentioned some late 19th century dress objects. How early does your collection go? And I would assume, I mean, is the 1800s your vague earliest thing? And do you actually have 2D art that is that is early as well?
We do. Trying to think of, I believe we have a Catlin in our collection. He was a really early artist who wasn't native, but is pretty famous for documenting native culture. Those pieces are very old. We have some really important pieces, 2D pieces as well. Our Oscar Howe is probably our most valuable piece, and there's also there's a piece called Indian Christ, which I should have a slide for you, but also on that piece, that's replicated in our chapel.
Oh, I think I've seen that image. But Oscar Howe, for some of the audience members, is a very prolific artist of the Upper Plains. I mean, he is incredibly well known. Major regional artist. Okay, next question. Thank you, Dave. It's been really interesting. Do the embellishments represent tribe or status or some other thing in some way? How do we, so one of the things that we do is, as dress historians, is read these objects. So what do the embellishments mean?
Okay, something that I've learned over time. So the short answer is yes. That yes, there's accomplishments. Sometimes like showing wealth or showing accomplishments of your whole family. But what I've learned since working here is that every family was really unique. You know, so for instance, there's floral patterns, and when I was new to learning about our collection, I assumed that meant those patterns probably came from further north, but not necessarily. So even within one tribe, there'd be different types of patterns. So I was always, you know, attempting to look up in a book of like symbols or something, like what exactly does that shape mean? It may have meant something different from one family to another, which makes it more complicated, but also emphasizes how the regalia is an extension of that person, and it's very personal. Yeah. I'm not sure if I answered the question or if I went off.
Absolutely, it's very complex. How many different how many different tribes are within represented by your museum, and within the sort of Upper Plains or in South Dakota in particular?
Okay, so we represent Northern Plains tribes, and that's, to me, is a a strength of our museum is that our focus is narrow, so we can try to be the best we can be at that. And so it's, you know, worth the time of a scholar to come, because hopefully we have information that everyone has. Well, I don't know if I put it that way, but you know what I'm trying to say. But
Yes.
Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota are related, and that's just slightly different dialects. Cheyenne, Blackfeet, Crow, Omaha, Mandan, and Arikara, those are like, I mean, a lot of the stuff, like when we do text, we use Lakota, because I would say Lakota is majority, but Northern Plains is what we consider our focus when we're collecting.
Awesome, thank you. One audience member says, you seem to be very well funded, like those storage cabinets, exclamation point. So what are your sources of funding? Is it all donation, as you mentioned before, or do you receive grants and other things of that nature, or?
I mean, primarily it's because we're part of St. Joseph's Indian School, and our fundraising for the school and the museum is connected to that. We do apply for grants at times to help with certain projects. But yeah, we're definitely blessed. The more I learn about museums, the more I realize how blessed we are. So very appreciative of that.
Excellent, thank you. One spectator says, the moccasins were amazing. I could have looked at them for a very long time. So if we could have some stills of those moccasins, that would be great. And even the unfinished ones. So her question is, do you have to work to strike a balance between cultural preservation and cultural appropriation? How do you balance those two challenging things?
Cultural preservation and cultural appropriation. So
yes.
To clarify, you know, like, so that one group is not trying to be the other culture, is that how you'd rephrase that?
So especially in fashion, and in many other ways, but especially in dress, this is most often seen when, for example, high-end or haute couture designers, especially recently, will really lift images or actual garments or embroidery techniques of a culture and claim it as their own. So do you grapple with, I mean, you are collecting native things, so
right.
These are made by native people. So how do you, or, you know, do you,
yeah,
so talk
I think
about
I'm tracking that. Thank you for helping out there. So that's an interesting topic, and you know, that probably could be a question that would warrant a whole documentary. But one of the things I see about it is it's kind of a two-way. There's give and take from both cultures both ways, for our multiple cultures, not just native and non-native. But to me, there seems to be as much pressure on young native artists to be experts of their culture. You know, I mean, not every young Native American as an artist or even non-artist should necessarily should be expected to be like, oh, you're Native, you represent your entire race, and you have to make this kind of art. So there's the freedom of you know, like, okay, for instance, and maybe I'm going too sideways here, but when I was a teacher, you know, for 1st to 8th graders, an art teacher, all my students wanted to draw was basketballs and basketball players, like they love basketball. And to me, that's part of their culture. It's just their contemporary culture. So the short answer is yes. Yes, you always have to be aware of that balance between where things are being appropriated with. I mean, so one more piece of this is there's appropriation or understanding or learning from or sharing the information with respect, and there's doing it without respect. And I think that's where it gets tricky.
Yeah. It
Okay.
is. It's a fine line. No, you're absolutely. These are contemporary issues, and these are ongoing things that many museums, many collections, designers, the discipline of dress, which is encompassing many different disciplines, all must walk and consider. So it's a thing that, you know, as a community, we are having these conversations not only as ways of educating ourselves, but helping to educate other people and just bringing awareness to these issues. So yes,
Absolutely.
one viewer asks, I'm curious about the provenance of the personal objects in the collection. So I'm going to interpret that to mean, how do you get the objects in your collection other than excuse me, other than the ones you acquire through the art sale? How is your collection amassed?
Okay, absolutely. In the early years, like, you know, the beginning of the school, 1927, there was people in the organization that collected the art, that collected their, was gifted the art and bought art. And I think a collection started to amass before that's where the museum came from. There wasn't in the beginning this intention of we're going to build a museum. It's that these objects we wanted to take care of, we had more and more of them. So I hope I said that correctly.
Yeah.
But then over time, a lot of gifts. But even now, there's a lot of, from nationwide, we'll get an email or something, you know, I have this object. I think it was better suited for your museum than my house. We have a lot of objects where we're not sure the complete provenance. So yeah, I guess it's like there's these time periods of how things and where they came from, how they were acquired. And I've been in this position a year, and I've been doing research, and there's several items that it'll say like the information's lost, like when I look in past perfect, right. Through time. So yeah, it's a challenge.
I'm going to piggyback off that and ask you about repatriation. Has there been, you know, why have you not repatriated these objects and given them back to the native cultures that are surrounding you?
That's a very good question. So the items that are generally, so my understanding, the items that are generally repatriated from in different tribes across the country, a lot of times it has to do with what exactly that item means to that culture. So especially items of a spiritual nature, or especially remains, like which we would never do that, you know. So we don't have anything like that in our collection. That being said, when those laws were passed, and that started becoming, I was a graduate student around that time when that was really a hot issue. The director told me that, I was talking to her today about it, that they discussed it and how it would work, and if it should happen, if it needs to happen. And really our position as a museum is that absolutely, if there's something that somebody's seeking and we have and we shouldn't have, we want to go through that process of getting it back to them. That being said, we're a relatively young museum. We with like tribal members and council members, a lot of times things are given to us because, kind of like our collection storage, like it's not our item, it's still their item, but we're keeping it humidity safe, so to speak. So it's like we're taking care of these items, and but they don't really belong to us.
Yeah, thank you. Yes,
you're a custodian. Very good, thank you.
Thank you. A couple of people have commented on the bead detail. So the bead detail is, you're getting gold stars across the boards on bead details. Another one has mentioned that while she has never been to South Dakota, she now wants to come and see your museum. Yes, that's exactly what we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
And then to follow up on the appropriation question, So this person asks, well, not being native, she was working on some research, but was not allowed to access some collections because she was not native. So, are there any of those sorts of conditions or requirements with your collection or with objects in your collection? How do you represent? How do you handle those sorts of things?
Yep, that's a very, very good question. In lots of tribes, it's like there's information that's sacred, information that's not meant for everybody. Maybe a medicine man will share with just one other person, which is from a research standpoint, that gets tricky because it's an oral tradition. And from an academic point of view, like, oh, I don't want any information lost. But from a philosophical point of view, maybe that's what's supposed to happen. So as far as the question of, can anyone come and access the collection? It has a lot to do with intent. Like we're the stewards of these objects, and I can't really imagine a scenario in which I'd say, what, you want to learn something? No way. But we want to do what's best for the culture. And if there's a time when we're not sure, we would reach out to Native American people we partner with, and so that we make sure to do things correctly. And just on another way to reference that just a little bit is we have one cabinet that's specifically spiritual, and I made the conscious decision that I don't think I want that cabinet open during a webcast. So there's always respect there, but there's always, I would give anyone an opportunity to learn if I could.
Right, excellent. We're coming close to our time, but I have one last question for you. How many of your objects are digitized and on the web? And I ask this out of a little bit of self-promotion and promotion of CSA. So we have begun, and actually two programs that I want to point out to you and to people who may not be members of CSA. So not only do we have several grants available to organizations and individuals, but we also have a program called the Angels Project, which helps collections in need, which may not be you, rehouse and do certain projects that they need. And we also have we've started a new initiative to help collections digitize and to train in appropriate digitization standards called the Digital Angels. I am part of that, and my colleague Monica Sklar. So I'm wondering if you can tell me how much of your objects are digitized and where you're at on that path now in the day of COVID when we're doing everything digital.
Right. Probably, referencing my Steadicam not working and being sideways, it should be some clue. But St. Joe's is lucky enough that the museum gets to share, I guess, staff, so to speak. So St. Joseph's Indian School has a photographer. The museum doesn't have a photographer, but she'll come and help us out. So, but that being said, we have things digitized enough that we're able to make the most of our Past Perfect program. The way we catalog our items, but from my perspective, I want to go a lot further, and I would love to see as much of our collection for people to be able to search it online. And then part of I love what you're doing, because for me, part of the thing is that I have so much pride in the collection that I want this to look perfect. I want it to look so good, and I can't do that with my iPhone. So the will is there, but we definitely have a learning curve to get through, and we're looking forward to being available to everyone online.
Yeah, and it would be a really interesting way. Those would be such interesting objects to photograph and to deal with. One of the other sort of elements of the Digital Angels is we're dealing with nomenclature standards and trying to address how we call things, so that way. And secondly, what we'll do, hopefully, we have 2 NEH grants out for these projects, is to actually pull together kind of an online searchable portal, for lack of a better word, where collections like yours or like the Aktá Lakota and others, smaller ones, can actually feed information so scholars and researchers and the general public can find
Right.
out where you're at and what you have and who has it, so that way it enables us to more effectively do the research that we need and get these things out there for broader representation around the country and around the world. So
Pretty good, yeah.
are there any last questions from the audience? Thank you all. Dave, do you have anything last that you would like to say?
Just that I appreciate you, and I appreciate the Costume Society of America, and this was fun, and I hope my camera wasn't too shaky.
No, we're used to it, so it's fine. We it's all good. You're all good. It was really great and really fun. We kind of love this low tech,
Yeah, there we go.
Cool. It's super cool. It's totally punk in a way.
Very good.
So Dave, thank you so much for your time today. In the post, there's some more information about membership and how to reach us. So once again, thank you everyone for today and today's guest, Dave Meyer, for his time. We thank you for attending. Please follow the Costume Society of America on Facebook and Instagram, and make sure that you hear about our upcoming episodes of Conversations on Dress. Next week's episode of CSA's Oral Histories, featuring the very one and only Anne Buissonet. Lastly, if you enjoyed today's content, please make a small contribution to help keep this content free for all. There's a link in the chat box for you. Thank you all so much for attending today. Thank you, Dave, again. This has been quite a pleasure, and such beautiful things.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day,
Have a
everyone.
good night.